Good morning, students. Welcome back to Zoom class for Botany. Today I am going to introduce concept of species. Previously we discussed taxonomy and systematics and definition of taxonomy and difference between taxonomy and systematics and taxonomical hierarchy that we have discussed, right? So let us continue concept of species. Actually, concept of species is nothing but a species is a fundamental basic unit of a taxonomic group, right? So species is the lowest taxa, the plant kingdom, right? So species is considered to be as a fundamental unit of taxonomical group, right? So that is called simply species. So species always occupies the lowest taxa, lowest level of plant kingdom, right? So now we are going to discuss about different concept of species. As I said, species is a basic unit or a fundamental unit of taxonomy, right? So taxonomy, it includes simply classification, identification, description, naming of plant. So in which species is taken as a fundamental unit or basic unit in classification of plant, right? So here concept of species is broadly divided into mainly three types, right? The first type is morphological. Second one, biological. And third one, phylogenetic, right? Species, concept of species are classified into mainly three types. The first type is a morphological species. The second type is biological. And third type is phylogenetic species. Before going to discuss about the classification and types of concept species, just I would like to introduce what is species and what is its general characteristics of species, right? As I said, species is nothing but it is a fundamental unit or the lowest unit or basic unit of plant kingdom, right? Now, what are the salient features of species or what are the general characteristic features of species? Generally, if we take it, now this is a place where you find, just I would like to represent some species, right? It is a place where you see the plants which are morphologically similar, right? Simply a group of individual which shows closely resemblance. Now just I'm going to point to two different population, right? The one is a green population, the other one is a red population. Please understand, in order to understand quickly, right? So this is each one is known as a species. As I said, it is a basic unit or a fundamental unit of a plant kingdom, right? So here green plants are there, here and some more plants are there, right? So there is a group of individuals which are closely related, right? They are categorized under one group. So that is called simply species. So species is nothing but a basic unit. So this basic unit of the plant kingdom that shows a closely resemblance with one another. So that is called species, right? So here the first circle, the first place where you see a number of plants, all the plants are similar in their morphological structure and anatomical structure, right? They are classified under one group, right? And let us take another one, blue color, that this surrounding this area encloses some species, which are entirely different from the first category that we discussed. Now, when we take it is the first group of plant, and let us take it is the second group of plant. The second category that consists of a number of living organisms, but all are dissimilar. They are morphologically dissimilar nature, so they are categorized under another group. So here, if you take every group, in every group you find a number of plants. So all the plants are morphologically similar. So hence, this member or the population of individual, they show closely resemblance, right? So that is the first point of a species. Second point, all the species, they may form a descendant from the common ancestor. Dear student, please understand. The first point, as I said, that shows a closely resemblance. The second point, it shows the common, they are derived from common ancestor. So simply, they show descendants, right? From a common ancestor, right? From a common ancestor. Common ancestor means the species are derived from the pre-existing plant, right? If a first plants originated just millions of years, from that, a group of plants or group of individual or derived from one generation, right? So all these descendants are derived from the common ancestor. So that is one of the characteristics of species. Students, I am talking about what the salient features of species. So the first salient feature is simply the group of individual. They show common resemblance, right? Closely resemblance you see in this picture. But it's the second point, they form simply descendants from the common ancestor. That is the second point. And third one, the sexually producing, simply, it also forms fertility of spring. It also forms fertility of spring or fertile offspring. As I said, species are nothing but it is a fundamental unit. So these a group of individual which will form a fertile offspring from one generation to another generation. So all this fertile offspring can be obtained by sexually producing organism, right? In the environment, in the surrounding. So this is a simply general characteristic of a species, right? So I repeat once again, I have discussed about the salient features of species. The first point is a group of individual. They may form a closely related resemblance with one another in a population, in a group of individuals, right? So whereas the second point, all the species, they may form a descendants from the common ancestor. And third one, it also produces a fertile offspring. All these offsprings are obtained from the sexually producing organ or asexually producing organ, right? So this is a general characteristic of species. Okay, and now let's move for a classification of the species. As I said, it can be classified into three types. They are morphological species and biological species, and third one is a phylogenetic species, right? Dear student, please understand. I'm talking about the types of species. Species are broadly divided into, as I said, following types, right? The first type is a morphological. Right? The second type is, as I said, biological. The second type is a biological. And third one, the third category is phylogenetic, right? Phylogenetic species. So as we discussed, species are nothing but it is a group of individual or the most fundamental unit of classification of plant kingdom, right? So they are the descendants from the common ancestor, and they can be obtained as fertile offspring, right? Which are obtained by sexual and asexual methods of plant kingdom, right? So morphological species are nothing but simply the species or a group of population or similar, morphological similar from one another, right? That is called a morphological species. I repeat once again, if you go to forest, you see, you can find, now this is a forest, right? If you go to any forest or any region, you may say a group of plants which are similar, morphologically similar, right? If you go to forest, you see a number of species or originator in a particular place which are having similar habitats and similar characters. Morphological, they are similar. That is called a morphological species. Those species which show morphologically similar in structure and their habitations and habitat habitation, that is called morphological species. Whereas biological species are nothing but a group of individuals, they may interbreed naturally or they may interbreed in nature, but they can be isolated from one another. So that is called morphological species, right? And phylogenetic species are nothing but it shows a simply evolutionary species. Suppose if you take a plant now, this is the first plant, right? And it is the first plant. From the plant, it may be originated very long years, long ago, right? From that, the plants are originated continuously from one generation to next generation, right? So these species are called as a phylogenetic species. So phylogenetic species are nothing but it is a derivation of a species from a common ancestor through a lineage. So simply it forms a lineage. Lineage means the origin and development of species from the ancestor, from the most primitive form, they are continuously originated from one species to another species, from one generation to another generation through evolutionary sequences. So hence it forms like a lineage. Simply phylogenetic species are nothing but it is an evolutionary species that forms a lineage in condition, right? Because all the species originated from one plant to one generation to another generation. Its character, it is going to be obtained just commonly, right? From one species to another species. So this is called the phylogenetic species. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about this morphological species. It is also known as a taxonomical species. Dear student, please understand. Morphological species, it is also known as a taxonomical species. It is also called as taxonomical species. Dear students, do you understand what I taught you today? Did you understand? Students, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Could you
sir.
mention the another term of
Yes, sir.
morphological species?
Yes, sir.
Morphological species is also known as
Taxonomical
Species.
sometimes you can expect this content in your examination, both board and need, right? Which of the following is known as a taxonomical species? A student kindly cooperate. Please, you are kindly requested to cooperate only, not to make unnecessary activities, right? Right. And biological species, it is also known as biological species. It is also called as isolation species. Please understand. Yes, student, please understand. Biological species, it is also known as isolation. Right? Isolation species. Biological species, right? Biological species is also known as, students, did you understand? It is also known as a isolation species, right? This biological species, it was first introduced by one of the scientists, right? Students, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Biological species is also known as the
Isolated species.
isolation species.
Species.
Okay, right, very good. It was first introduced by Ernest Mayr. Biological species. It was first introduced by Ernest Mayr. In the year of 1963. The year of 1963. Biological species. It was first introduced by, dear student, please follow me. Ernest Mayr. What is it exactly? A group of individuals may interbreed. Dear student, just let me explain. I'm talking about biological species. They are nothing but a group of individuals. Biological species. As I said, it was first introduced by Ernest Mayr, right? In the year of 1963. The year of 1963. What is it? A group of individual or population, they may interbreed. Interbreed in nature, right? But all the populations are interbreed in nature by sexually reproducing process, right? And they are reproductively isolated. Those organisms which will involve in interbreeding naturally, which are isolated reproductively, hence it is known as a isolation species. Dear student, please understand why it is known as isolated species, because the species are isolated reproductively, which may interbreed in nature, a group of population, right? Now just just imagine, now this is a place where you find a group, a plant, number of plants are there. Here you find a number of plants. All the plants are naturally, which are able to interbreed, right? So these interbreeding individuals are isolated. What is the basis? By reproducing reproductively, those species which are interbred nature reproductively, they are isolated. Hence they are known as an isolated species. Dear student, did you understand why it is known as isolated species? Because the group of
Because reproductively isolated.
Isolated, sir.
right. Could you mention the name of the scientist who proposed the biological species?
Ernest
Ernest Mayr in
Very good.
1963.
Very good. Keep it up. Okay. Right. Hoping that topic has been reached on you. Okay, next week. Right. So next we pass on to phylogenetic species. As I said, phylogenetic species are nothing but it is a evolutionary species that forms a lineage of group of population, group of individual, right? So that is called a simply phylogenetic. Phylogenetic. Phylogenetic species. Simply that shows the evolutionary sequences, right? Evolutionarily, the species are originated, which are involved, right? So they are called phylogenetic species. It was first developed by Meglifish, right? It was first developed by Meglifish, right? In the year of 1954. Then later on, it was also developed by another scientist, Simpson. Another scientist, Simpson. The year of 1961. Right? And later on, one of these scientists also jointly associated with these people, right? Namely, Willie, in the year of 1978. Actually, these three people who involved in the development of phylogenetic species. As I said, the phylogenetic species are nothing but they are the evolutionary species. It is also known as simply the phylogenetic species. It is also called as evolutionary species. Yes, students. Could you mention the scientists who were involved in the development of phylogenetic species?
Meglifish in 1950, in 1961,
Very
while
good.
in 1978.
1978. Actually, who are these people? Why are they involved here?
Introduced
They are
the
the scientists
phylogenetic
involved in the development of
phylogenetic species.
very good.
Phylogenetic species.
Species. Very good. A phylogenetic species is also known as a evolutionary species. Also called as a evolutionary species because these evolutionary species, all the species are derived from one parents to another. I mean, from parents to offspring, right? Evolutionary, that means all the species are derived from the common ancestor, right? So along with these characters are derived from one generation to another generation, right? So sometimes this is a question to be concentrated in one more question, right? A phylogenetic species, also known as DES, or a phylogenetic species was first developed by DES, or which of the following species has been developed by Simpson in the year of 1961, or name of this the scientist who involved in phylogenetic species, right? Sometimes you can expect, and which of the following species that forms a lineage?
Phylogenetic species.
Very good, very good, very good. Keep it off, right? Right. So this is a concept of species, right? I repeat once again because I have to go for next topic, right? Today we have discussed about the first topic is a concept of species. Before that, what is species? Now, species is a most fundamental unit in taxonomy or classification of plants, right? And our species are simply, they are the group of population, they forms closely resemblance, right, with one another. And second point, they form a descendants from the common ancestor. And third one, it also produces fertile offspring, right, by sexual and asexual method. And the species are classified into following types. They are morphological species and biological species, and third one is the phylogenetic species. And the morphological species is it is also known as a taxonomical species because the group of individual are similar in their morphological characters, right? Hence it is known as those species are morphologically similar. They are categorized under morphological species, right? And biological species means the group of individual, they may interbreed naturally, but which are isolated by reproducing structures, right, in the plant kingdom, the group of individual, hence it is known as isolation. It was first introduced by M.S. Mayer in the year of 1963. And the third type is a phylogenetic species. It is also known as evolutionary species because it was first developed by one of the scientists in English, right, in the year of 1954, and later on, Simpson also associated in the development of phylogenetic species. And finally, one of the scientists who involved very later, namely Willie, in the year of 1978. So these three people who developed the phylogenetic species, it is also known as a evolutionary species, right? Because these evolutionary species that forms the lineage of a group of individual, right, from one generation to another generation, right? So next we pass on to types of all these. Generally, we have discussed three types of species. Now the species are classified into mainly two types generally. As I said, the species classification, right? Here next we pass on to another type of classification of species. Now species are broadly divided into two types. They are the process of evolution and product of evolution. Generally, species are divided into two types based on the evolution, right? So the first type is, let me take the first type is the process of evolution. Process of evolution. In the process of evolution, only biological species are involved. Dear student, please understand. Because only the living organism are involved, right? Process of evolution means in which the biological species which plays a very prominent role, right, in the development of evolution, right? In the process of evolution. Whereas a product of evolution, another category, let me take, right? That is product of evolution. Product of evolution. So based on the evolutionary sequence, species are divided into generally two types. They are a process of evolution, that is the first type, right? That is the first type. Whereas the second type is a product of evolution. The second type is a product of evolution, right? In the product of evolution, the remaining two types are involved, remaining two categories except the biological. Could you mention another categories, right? Yes, students? I think nobody is going to answer, right? Okay. The first type is morphological species. Morphological species, right? And another type is phylogenetic species. And the type is phylogenetic species. SPD, species. Dear students, did you understand another classification of species?
Yes, sir.
Will you
Yes,
mention the types, please? Will you mention the type?
Process
Process of evolution and process
of evolution, product of evolution. Yes.
Product of evolution. Okay, which of the following species comes under process of evolution?
Biological
Biological
species. Biological
Very
species.
good. So those plants or those organisms involved,
Parasitic plants.
right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. In the process of evolution, they are categorized under biological species, right? Okay, another one. Product of evolution.
Product of evolution. Product of evolution.
Very good, very good. Could you mention the types of species involved?
Morphological species and the phylogenetic species.
Very good. Now you can classify easily because we have discussed a number of species, right? Morphological, biological, phylogenetic, so many that we have discussed, by which you can categorize, right, yourself. Biological species comes under process of evolution, whereas under product of evolution, morphological species and biological species are placed categorized, right?
Yes,
Right.
sir.
This is the types of species. Any doubt regarding this topic?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Very good.
Sir.
No, sir.
Any doubt?
No, sir.
Right. Next we pass on to very interesting topic, that is I see, yes, one. Right, my dear students. So next we pass on to ICBN. That is very interesting topic. Please understand. ICBN. What is ICBN? It is nothing but an international code of botanical nomenclature. Right? Simply, it is a process of assigning names for an individual in a scientific way, in a scientific method, right? That is called ICBN. ICBN, I stands for international. I stands for international. C stands for code of. B stands for botanical nomenclature. B stands for botanical, and N stands for nomenclature. So this is I stands for international. Then C stands for code of, then B stands for botanical, then N stands for nomenclature, right? So this is the abbreviation of ICBN, International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. It is a assigning of names for an individual on a scientific basis, right? That is called ICBN, right? Actually, it is nothing but it is a naming a plant on a scientific basis, right? It is a system of the namings of a plant on a scientific basis. In another way, I can say it is a nothing but simply ICBN. It is a process of namings of a plant on a scientific basis, right? So that is called the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. So simply there is a rules which are framed by the eminent taxonomists who gathered in a place and recommended certain rules and regulations for framings of names is called as ICBN, International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. That consists of simply eminent taxonomist rules and regulations which are framed for a naming of a plant, right? that is called ICBN. Simply, I can say the eminent and expert taxonomist from India and the eminent expert taxonomist of America and the eminent taxonomist of Botany in London or throughout the world, the eminent taxonomists who gathered in a place and who discussed certain rules and regulations for framing a plant, how to name, what to name, which language should be given, and how many words should be there for naming a plant. So that is called that is dealt by simply ICBN. So simply nothing but ICBN, it is a process of assigning names for a plant on a scientific basis, right? It is called ICBN. So this ICBN, it was first introduced by Carolus Linnaeus. The first elementary rules were first introduced by Carolus Linnaeus. Basic rule. Basic rule or elementary rule of ICBN. The basic rule, it is also known as simply elementary rule. Elementary rule, basic rules or elementary rule. There is a set of rules which was created, which was first proposed by Linnaeus, who is the father of modern taxonomy. Linnaeus in the year of 1751. But all the rules and regulations of namings of plant, which was published in his textbook. Actually, Carolus Linnaeus is a father of modern taxonomy, who was published a book that is Philosophia Botanica. Philosophia Botanica. It is the first textbook, Philosophia Botanica. It is a book in which Carolus Linnaeus, who published namings of plant or related to ICBN, International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. Actually, Philosophia Botanica is a textbook which was published by Carolus Linnaeus in the year of 1751, but actually who reported about elementary rules in the year of 1751, but later on the rules and regulation or the recommendation of ICBN was published in his textbook, which was published in the year of 1830. 1830, because in the 1830, the textbook, that is a Philosophia Botanica, that describes about the classification of plant, which was published by Carolus Linnaeus, in which it had been described very detailed manner, right, about namings of a plant. Then later on, there is a basic set, or the later on it was developed by another scientist, namely Abido Gondola, ABD Gondola, ABD Gondola, right? Who has clearly explained about ICBN, who also recommended the rules and regulation of, right? It is a textbook that is which was published by Abide Gondola, namely Theory, Elementary, D-Law, Botanico, right? Actually, this is a textbook which was published by Abido Gondolo, right? Dear student, please understand. I'm talking about how ICBN evolved and what is ICBN, International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. In the first international botanical, actually international botanist, expert eminent botanist who came from different country and gathered and discussed certain rules and regulation recommendations which were framed by eminent taxonomists, right? And they framed it, they proposed it, how to name, which language should be applied, how to many words should be there for naming of a plant. So all the detail was described later on, Epido Gondola. And the present ICBN rules and regulation, the present what we are using, when we use the scientific name, there should be two words. The first name is so for example, Oraiza Sateva. I'd like to talk about the binomial scientific name. Oraiza Sateva. It is a binomial of paddy. This is a current system of ICBN. It is a current system of ICBN which was implemented or proposed by Epido Candolo and his sons. His sons also involved, right? Namely, Alfonso Candolo. Alfonso di Candolo. Actually, is a son of. Is a son of Epido Gondola. Augustine, Epido Gondola, Epido Gondola, Augustine Romain di Gondolo. Is a father and his son. Epido Gondola, Augustine Romain di Gondolo is a father and his son, namely Alfonso di Gondolo. Both of them jointly proposed a current system of ICBN. What we are using, then what has been implemented, what has been used throughout the world. So that is called what has been followed, the rules and regulation of ICBN. I mean the naming a plant by two words. They are genus name and a species name. So the first letter is a generic name or a genus name, and the second word is a species name or a specific name. So this is a current system of ICBN. This is a current system of ICBN which was first proposed by Epido Candolo is a father and his son is also Alfonso di Gondolo. Actually, they conducted a number of congress, right? They are called simply Botanical Congress. Now I like to mention there are different international botanical congress was held, right? The first international botanical congress was held in Paris. Hence, it is known as a Paris Court. It is also known as a Paris Court. Dear students, please understand. Please understand, I have collected some important events, right, for you. So this is called Paris Court. The first International Botanical Congress was held in 19th century, right, in Paris. The first International Botanical Congress was held in Paris. Right, the city is of Paris and the country is of France, and the decision on the nomenclature differed. The first action was taken. The second Botanical Congress was held I'm talking about second Botanical Congress was held in Vienna in the year of 1905, right? So it was conducted, the second Botanical Congress was held in Austria, right? So the first binding rules of nomenclature and the French became the official language. In Vienna court, in Vienna meeting, the official language is the French. It has been considered, right? But later on, it is also slightly changed into Latin transcription or Latin description also implemented, right? And third Botanical Congress was held in Brussels in the year of 1910. This Botanical Congress was held in Belgium. Why I'm saying? Because the number of Botanical Congress. What is Botanical Congress? Botanical Congress is a kind of conference in which the eminent taxonomists who gathered from various countries and discussed and they made certain rules and regulations for naming a plant, right? So that is called as a Botanical Congress. Dear students, did you understand about the Botanical Congress?
Yes, sir.
Actually, Botanical Congress is
Yes, sir.
conference in which the taxonomist, naming scientists who came from different countries and gathered in a place and who discussed certain rules and regulations for naming and framing a plant, right? So that is called the Botanical Congress. That means a conference. So there are several conferences were held in different parts of the world. So just I like to give some important Congress meeting, right? The first one is Paris, second one is Vienna, third one is Brussels, right? Next we pass on to another one more. So like that, the current system has been where it is implemented. Current system of ICBN. So like that, there are number of conferences are there. Recently, for 1919, St. Louis, right? In which the diagram specimens also implemented, and recently 2005, right? So 18th, right? 18th International Botanical Congress was held. I'm sorry, 17th one, right? Here 18th is this is a 18th one, Melbourne. In Australia, if you go to, you can see Australia, the 18th conference was held in Melbourne, right? That is very important. Then recently, right, which is very interesting one, in China, 19th International Botanical, that means 19 times the eminent taxonomists who gathered in a place and discussed in a conference how to name a plant and what to name, right? That is called the International Code of Botanical Congress, International Botanical Congress, we can say. So here, this is the area to be focused in one more question, right? Please understand, 19th Botanical Congress was held. That is a question. Dear students, please understand. Could you mention 19th Botanical Congress was held in the place? Could you mention the place?
In China.
China, sir.
Shenzhen. It's a place where is 19th conference was held. Okay.
Shenzhen.
Shenzhen.
Shenzhen. Okay. And next, could you mention 18th Botanical Congress was held?
Melbourne at Australia.
In Australia.
Melbourne in Australia.
Right, in Melbourne, right. Actually, in Melbourne, some important decision was made. Important suggestion was accepted. That is, electronic devices also permitted. So please understand, the electronic devices or electronic like computer has been permitted. The usage of computer previously in first code, in second code, third Botanical Congress, in fourth Botanical Congress, only the specimens are only allowed. I mean, herbarium sheets are only allowed to identify, to classify, to describe, to name, right? But recently, right from 2011, in which the 18th Botanical Congress was held. From that, conference, the usage of electronic devices have been permitted, right? In order to registration of fungal names. In one more thing, the electronic devices also, not only that, the usage of English or Latin. Generally, the description of plants are only recommended in those days, right from first Paris Code and second Botanical Congress, only Latin language has been only permitted. But right from 2011, right, from 2011 onwards, the usage of English also accepted as an official language, right? And one more Botanical Congress it to be held, right? The last one we're going to talk about. Why I'm saying, because from the ICBN code you can expect one question, right? Definitely you can expect board and NEET exam. Definitely you can expect. My dear students, and 2024, right? In Spain, it is going to end in 2024 in Spain, right? Okay. Actually, how many years? There are 6 years months. The Botanical Congress, it is going to held in every season. 6 years months, right? 6 years once. So thank you for joining, my dear students. Any doubt regarding?
No doubt, sir.
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So far, how many Botanical Congress was held in various parts of the world?
20.
20.
19.
19,
19.
sir.
Congress was not held yet to held. It is going to held in Spain.
2024
2 years, it's going to happen. Within 2 years, right? So
Yes,
thank you for joining, my dear students.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you,
I'm going to
Thank you,
give-
sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.